And that's the American robin, Turdus migratoris, bringing us in with a beautiful bird song that gives me some childhood nostalgia. Welcome to the Dissectify podcast, the show that gets you curious about the wild world outside of your window, bringing you content hopefully every Tuesday. I'm your host, Nicholas Saenz. Let's start off with some of the claims I made last week on the previous episode. Just to make sure I'm not misleading anybody, yes, in fact, sharks do have spiral-shaped intestines as well as other interesting shapes that slow the flow of food and allow for more surface area for digestion. If you're tuning in on YouTube, I'll put some links in the sources or in the description, and everyone else, either check out our YouTube or don't. That's okay. Second claim was that we had passed a climate tipping point where oceans are getting too warm for corals. Basically, we're guaranteed now, or we're in the process of passing that checkpoint where corals are going to have more and more bleaching events. And if you have enough bleaching events, then corals die off. And this is going to become a global thing as waters start to warm. I'll put that report in the description as well. But enough with the doom and gloom for now. I wanted to share some thoughts I had this episode about biology and nature, because to me it's always been like a personal thing. And I think it would be personal to a lot of people too, had they, taken the time to like notice it and give it a little more attention. Right. While there's, everybody has a lot of things on their mind. You're worrying about getting laundry done or being able to afford a new set of tires for your car. Maybe you have a homework assignment that's due soon. Something stressful at work. I can't solve your problems. That's part of life. But here's my thought. While you may go on thinking about your problems and feeling stressed, the natural world goes on. What do I mean by this? I mean that animals are hunting or foraging for food, whether it's a finch gathering seeds and insects or something more dramatic like a mountain lion hunting a deer. Things go on. Trees gather sunlight, delicate webs of fungus underground break down food, and produce really amazing structures like mushrooms. Birds sing, flowers bloom. Funny enough, I think those are the last two that most people focus on, the birds and the flowers, because they're easy to find, charismatic. Anyways, here's my point. That stopping and taking a wider view and shifting your focus can really help you deal with the stressors of life. Now, I'm not advocating for nature's only being there to help you de-stress. And also importantly, I'm not trying to give the impression of like the idealistic Disney version of nature. Nature's opportunistic, and it's filled with organisms that are fighting for their spot, to survive, get resources. So, yeah. But life goes on for many other species. No matter what the stressful change is, I personally find it comforting in knowing that beauty and that complexity is always there, right? It doesn't really matter what I have going on in my life. If I get a flat tire, or if I'm meeting my significant other's parents for the first time, the beauty's still there. Complexity's still there. Which brings me to the first tool. So I'm trying to give people to shift their attention and give them the tools and resources to try to, notice this stuff. And it may be a little simple to call it a tool, but I promise it works. That is slow down and notice. Maybe even find a spot just to soak in your surroundings, right? Wait longer than other people normally would. Just in one spot. And maybe here's where I kill the mood a little bit. Again, I'm not trying to push the Disney version of nature. Also be aware of your surroundings, right? Danger isn't out to get you, but there can be some things that could harm you every now and then. But here's a story to kind of like push that example that I'm trying to get across. Push the point I'm trying to get across. I took a really long road trip from the Pacific Northwest down to Arizona this spring. And I wanted to see all the species I could along the way. I was like, I'll hit the national parks, which maybe now are a little bit more in trouble. Yeah, I wanted to do this journey, see as many species as I could along the way. And along the way was the Grand Canyon. So I was like, okay, I'll stop. Made my way to the south entrance, I think it was, and a bit of a digression here. So when I got out of my car, I'm going to the main visitor area to get the view of the Grand Canyon, and I saw this massive black bee, right? Shiny, like had to be over an inch long, looked really sturdy, and maybe it could hurt you. But yeah, I found out it's called Xylocopus sonorina, a common name valley carpenter bee. And yeah, it had to be over an inch, and I see this thing fly past me, and it stops in front of this 8 to 10-year-old boy, and I'm like, okay, somebody's gonna start freaking out. Oh, get this bug away from me. But yeah, no, I mean, he got excited, but his response was really heartwarming to me. He says oh, wow, how beautiful, and he's pointing it out to his parents. It was just really good to see. And yeah, it had this weird way of acting to the bee, not the boy. The bee, yeah, had this way of calmly, it would fly around and then just kind of calmly stop and just kind of float in midair and assess for I'd say 5 seconds was typical. And yeah, it was just really cool to see. I'll put some pictures up if you're on the YouTube version of this. That I found out the females are black and shiny while the males are really fuzzy golden bugs. Kind of cool. So if you're on YouTube, I'll put that up. And if I'm able to, I'll try to include it in the description in the podcast too, but we'll see. You drink of water. Okay. Yeah, on the same visit, after checking out all the plant species, which is a good thing to do, I would say, right? Because they don't move, they're there. Check out all the plant species that are nearby. Okay, I'll go to the rim of the canyon, and I noticed there's this large flock of ravens that are riding the upcurrents of the updrafts up the canyon walls. And I'm hearing them making their characteristic barking noises. And I'm between a Tetranurius aviciana, this plant with these beautiful yellow petals that are fringed on the ends, and next to this desert dwelling bush called an artemisia. So I'm between these two plants, taking in the environment, and I'm okay, I got a view of the river, right? Below in the canyon, and there's these ravens nearby, there's a bunch of them, and I'm okay, well, I'll just soak in nature, do my thing, and then hopefully I'll get a picture of the raven flying into frame for this picture that I want to get. Importantly, that's not the main point, right? I'm just soak it in. And while I'm doing that, I'm sitting between these two plants, just like waiting for the shot. And yeah, you just start to notice the smells and the noises and like pick things up. You pick up the ecological interactions. You start to notice what's interacting with what, bugs interacting with plants and reptiles and birds. And yeah, it's just really cool. But yeah, I ended up sitting there cross-legged on the rim of the Grand Canyon, and this lizard called the Sceloporus magister, so common name is like a spiny lizard or something like that, and it's like looking at me from this bush nearby, and then like slowly starts getting closer, and eventually like climbs up onto my right leg, and then like is looking at me, and then eventually hops to my left leg, and then off, right, and continues on. But it was like this really cool moment that wouldn't have happened had I chosen to just like kind of do the more tourist thing, I guess. So be like in the cement, steel railing viewing area. Yeah, it was just a cool moment. And it wouldn't have happened had I not chosen to just wait and observe. And you may be thinking, like, well, that sounds great. I want to have moments like that too, but I can't afford to go to the Grand Canyon. I can't, it's too far. You don't need to go to these places that are like really dramatic. There's nature wherever you happen to be. I know I've had a similar experience in a tiny backyard, cement platform with some bushes around it, and doing the same thing. Just like sitting, waiting, observing, and you start to see things around you that like, animals either don't care that you're there or kind of get used to you or just haven't noticed you. And you'll start to see these interactions. But yeah. And like that townhouse I mentioned is like near a big city. It's not like super nature filled. But all you really need is like enough biodiversity, enough plants that give resources, and enough space for animals to like come through and like utilize, have things to utilize in the area. And if you put yourself in somewhere like that, then you'll get these really nice experiences. And I would argue also like knowing, right? Like becoming familiar with these things, you start to notice like patterns. It starts to become like not just relaxing, but like much more interesting when you start to pick up on what's going on and how it's working, right? It like gives it another level of interest. So I wanted to end this episode on one last section I'm going to call Biota Beat. So I'm going to showcase some organism and tell you all about it. It'd be great. Yeah. But this whole thing is in process, still very, very new to this, and I'm trying to be better, trying to learn, share that passion and the experience that I've had so far with all this stuff. Yeah. And for the organism today, I found something called a pom-pom crab or a boxer crab, are the two common names that it goes by. And scientific name is Libia tessellata. Can be found in the shallow waters of the Indo-Pacific. They're extremely shy, very small crabs that can be encountered usually by divers who are like going in dim light, so like morning, evening, or like straight up in the middle of the night is when most of these crabs tend to be found. Yeah, and they're sort of like the really interesting thing they do is they'll take like a stunted anemone, so like the things that clownfish live in, right? They'll take these little anemones and hold one in each claw, which their claws are tiny. They're like worthless for self-defense, just big enough to like hold these anemones. And they have like two purposes, right? So some of the anemones, like a species, an example is Triactis producta. I'm not down on my anemone biology or species yet. Maybe someday. But yeah, they'll use these sea anemones to like mop up algae and food that they can then like scoop, use to catch their food. And then equally, now that they're like defenseless, they can use these anemones for like stinging things that they don't want near them. Just like all other crabs, when it has to molt. By the way, it's a true crab, so there's a lot of things that look like crabs. There's like this evolutionary joke that all roads in evolution lead to becoming to a crab, because it's happened, I think, like 8 times independently, but there's like only one group of like true crabs. But just like all other crabs, I guess, I think the non-true crabs also molt, but something to fact check next time. Yeah, but just like all other crabs, they'll molt when they grow. Except they get like extra vulnerable now, right? So like you have no claws for self-defense, you're molting, you become like soft-shelled, and you have to let go of your anemones. So like now you've got no claws, you've got like almost no shell, and now you don't got your little stinging pom-poms with you. So yeah, you're just like really kind of defenseless. So yeah, whenever that happens, they're in a bad spot. But again, yeah, these are really small, so the carapace, like body edge to body edge before you get to the legs on either side of the carapace, the carapace itself is like 2.5 centimeters, so really small. So I have to assume these pom-poms are like tiny, right? Maybe a centimeter or 2 each. Yeah, and these crabs are really shy. They try to be cryptic, which means like they'll try to use their coloration to blend into the environment and just hide from things. But yeah, if you ever find yourself in the Indo-Pacific and you want to find one of these yourself, I guess go during low light, probably be more experienced, or go with somebody who is. And yeah, be careful. You might get a little sting. Probably not going to kill you though. But yeah, that's all I got. Please leave a review wherever you're listening. I'd really appreciate it. Visit dissectify.com for more nature exploring tools. My Instagram at nicholas.science can be found there. Tag me in your nature photos if you'd like, and then maybe I'll reach out and see if I can include some of your pictures or some of the cool things you're finding in the videos. But yeah, remember, you live in a world with many other species, so get out there and check it out. I'm trying to do my best to make people aware and trying to make things better. Yeah. Bye.